Bonjour à tous, David Séjourné. Pour ce webinaire en fait autour de la structuration de la donnée de santé, les enjeux d'intelligence artificielle dans le domaine de la santé. Nous allons avoir le plaisir en fait d'avoir deux interlocuteurs aujourd'hui, Lorraine Marchand qui va se présenter et Stéphane Gervais-Ducouret qui vont se présenter également. Lorraine nous fait le plaisir d'être avec nous depuis les États-Unis. Donc, ce webinaire va avoir lieu en anglais. Je vais switcher tout de suite de langue, mais juste effectivement faire cette petite introduction en français où on va essayer de répondre au challenge en fait de la donnée, de la structuration de la donnée de santé et les stratégies possibles pour une PME occidentale aux États-Unis. We're going to start right now in English for everybody. So again, the challenge about the structured data for efficiency of AI, as well in an international context and with big players who influence the market, what kind of strategy and Western SME could choose? It's a questions we could, try to answer with Lorraine and Stéphane. And before everybody, I propose to Lorraine and Stéphane their, respective introductions of them, background, the expertise, the area of influence, and the experience about the subject. So, Lorraine, please introduce yourself. And thanks again to be with us today.
Well, thank you, David, and it's a pleasure to be with you and Stéphane today as well. So thank you for having me. My name is Lorraine Marchand, and I am currently the General Manager for Life Sciences at IBM Watson Health. And in that capacity, I work with pharma companies as well as medical device and related types of entities on their real-world data analytics and AI strategies and implementation of those strategies and needs. Previously, I was with IQVIA, which is also a global company that is in the real world as well as the contract research organization area. So I was a leader of life sciences there. I've also been at Cognizant Technology Solutions, also a data and AI and technology company. And I've spent my entire career in life sciences and healthcare. So I was at a senior role at Bristol Myers Squibb, senior role at Covance, which is a large CRO. And very early in my career, I was at the National Institutes of Health. And I also have founded or co-founded a number of startups in diagnostics, therapeutics, digital health, as well as pharma. So I like to say that I've sat in just about every seat in the healthcare life sciences ecosystem, with the exception of the payer. I have not been on the side of the payer or having to deal with reimbursement, but I do have good knowledge of the agenda of so many of the stakeholders in the ecosystem.
Wow, impressive background, Lorraine. Thanks again. Stéphane, could you introduce yourself as well, please?
Yeah, hi, Lorraine. Hi, David. Thanks. It's an honor to be here with you, especially with you, Lorraine. Okay. As I mentioned before, I'm not in healthcare market and at all, right? It's definitely not my background. However, I'm working in a mid-cap company, LACROIX Group. What we're doing, we're using technologies to build and to design and manufacture products, connected products for smart cities, for managing environment like water networks, mobility and everything, and a lot of electronics as well. So why I'm here, first, we are a mid-cap company, so close to SMEs issues and challenge. We have a strong, I would say, challenge in try to go into North American market and especially US market as well. And I've done AI for, I use AI. We're not doing anything. We're not providing any technologies. We're using technologies, AI for a couple of years, trying out with proof of concepts using AI in the cloud. Now I am more focused on embedded AI, means that we embed AI in specific devices for being able to recognize a specific patterns. It can be cameras, for instance, or whatsoever, which allows to be much more faster in trying to make a decision. And I'm here also to challenge the fact that AI is not only a technologies for that is easy to use. You need also to have a lot of things in place. The first things you need to try out and to get, I would say, I will share with you some of the experience a bit later.
Okay, thanks, Stéphane, and impressive background as well. Just to finish, I will introduce quickly myself as well. So, David Séjourné. Created a small strategy consulting firm called Management Europe 10 years ago. And our focus is mainly on SME, French and European SME in the healthcare sector. So it's since now we for international strategy we help some software company in France in the healthcare market to to optimize their business model and trying to get abroad in different countries, US, Germany, and so on. So I love when you could mix healthcare, digital model, and international context. It's clearly 3 pillars to create value. And so in this context, I met different companies who provide solutions for with AI, for the diagnostic, for care, for prevention. So it's a very interesting subject. We try to add this technology in the value proposition for different companies. So, but I mean, the subject could be very large, very complex. So I would like to have, the first question is for Lorraine. It's to have a better general understanding of AI in healthcare sector. What are the different statements? We could include a lot of things in that, and so up today, what is your view and the different opportunity and constraints you could see in this market, Lorraine?
Yeah, so you're right. It can be very vast, and I always feel as though it helps to bring things down and make it more practical if we can talk about some applications. So I think if we talk about some of the interesting applications of AI in healthcare, one of the areas that we can talk about is natural language processing. And I think that really continues to advance. I'd love to hear Stéphane's thoughts on that. But one use case in particular, which actually has been published and I can share with you, is a study that we did at IBM Research with patients who had developed Alzheimer's disease. And the way this worked was individuals were actually, their language was measured, their speech patterns. They also did an assessment of their handwriting and their comfort level with written material as well. And the thing that was interesting about the subject with the AI, it was able to predict with very, very good accuracy those individuals who would go on to develop Alzheimer's disease some 8 or 10 years later. So, interesting to know that even with NLP and handwriting, that we would be able to detect some of the symptoms that might make themselves more available as someone develops a neurological disease. Have done some similar types of work with Parkinson's. So I personally think that that's a really interesting application of AI, natural language, and also even handwriting and the ability to assess handwriting. And I'll give one other example, and then we can turn it over to Stéphane, possibly for comment. Because Stéphane, you talked about the AI embedded in a device. And another use case that I have worked on has actually been with looking at pain measurements and different pain thresholds and being able to measure pain, and particularly having the patient report on pain according to various scales, and having this actually embedded in the device that is a Parkinson's device that can help with, the avoidance of tremors and symptoms, and, being able to start then to also measure, pain or when they feel as though something like this is coming on. So I think the idea of embedding the technology in the device. Now, when we get into the US, there are certain regulatory pathways that we have to follow for such technology, software as a medical device, software in a medical device. So those get fairly complex, but I think the use cases are definitely increasing, and people are getting much more comfortable and seeing all of the fabulous advances with healthcare and AI.
Yeah, thanks, Lorraine. I just realized I didn't give much about my background, but in very short, my background is a mix of high tech. I'm coming from high tech industries, but now I'm doing a lot of innovation. My job is really innovating and converging new type of technologies with new use case, and see how we can do things from a different type of markets. And Lorraine, yeah, you. I'm not going to give more example, but all the example you gave are to me the best thing we can do with AI. Just to go back to your question, David, I'll just complement what is AI in a very simple way. The beauty of AI, when it's done well, when the data are ready, in quality, and we are going to see this a bit later, I'm sure, that you don't need to write a very complex algorithm, very complex software, very complex machine to get an outcome. What you only need to, we say only, of course, there is a great technology behind this, is you only get data and try to define which pattern you want to recognize among all this data. We say this in very simple way. So sorry, Lorraine, and the other guys in technologies. What it means that among I would say 1,000 or millions of data, we are able to statistically, because it's still statistics, of course. So you can go up to 90%, 99% or something at best, but recognize something, a pattern or a mixture of pattern that is impossible or extremely difficult to do if you need to write a complete software to do this in a standard algorithm. So it means that it can change completely the way we design a new type of device or solutions. Now we don't design anymore by having a software guy doing a big architecture and having a million of line of codes. What we do first is to get data scientists, and people knowing very well the issues in medical, healthcare, or industrial, and so on and so forth, to mix their know-how with their analytics around data. And what we have done on our side, on a very, I'd say, SME style, the first proof of concept was to get data and to get outcome of this data, not knowing even what is the equation, right? I'm talking about cameras. Today we're testing some and developing algorithm for cameras, outdoor cameras that give only text out of the camera. Like I've seen a pedestrian, so it's GDPR compliant, and it's giving only information, no longer just the full set of data. So the natural language is something also we can use every day on our side, like chatbots, for instance, right? So it's an outcome on this one. And why I'm interested by healthcare is healthcare to me has so much data, so much know-how and so much uncertainties as well. It's healthcare, so it's not pure science like physics or mathematics. You need, they need a kind of AI to try to address this challenge of data.
Yeah, it's thanks for both for your inputs, and I mean the data you discussed, Stéphane, is very important because I heard from I mean director of hospitals a lot of times. Yes, we have a lot of data, but the health data is I mean critical. Lorraine said you have a regulatory in US, but everywhere we have the RGPD in Europe. So my question is more about I mean I understand that to have the beauty and the powerful of AI with I mean Lorraine takes some examples around prevention, diagnostic, care solutions. You need data, okay, but do we need, I mean, structured data? We will discuss later about, I mean, how to take care about health data, but do we need structured data? For example, if I am a doctor, when I create data with, I mean, yes, voice recognitions or a report, that will be a letter, a word, and I mean, to have the powerful of AI in general, do we need structured data? What are the main issues to take care with data? Because the fact is that you could have, like you said, Stéphane, a lot of data in healthcare, but that should be a word, a letter. I mean, and you need in the healthcare sector, I mean, most of the times anonymized data. So yeah, what are your view about that? Lorraine, you want to start, and Stéphane complete your I mean your view?
Yeah, I think that we hear all the time from clients that they are overwhelmed with data. So there is so much data and they don't know exactly what they need, when they need it. So we have lots of choices. I think on data, the key is more, better quality data. We need more, better quality data, number one. And secondly, we need to design our solutions that utilize data to use cases. And what I mean by use cases is, for example, with pharma companies, if we want to develop an external comparator arm in a drug trial, if that's what we know the use case is, and let's say it's for oncology or it's for a neuromuscular disease, we then, based on that use case, based on the evidence that we need to gather, based on the endpoints that we need to drive toward, we can think very deliberately about not only the types of data that we need. Do we need genomic data, claims data, EMR data, digital data, genomic data? What kind of data do we need in order to fulfill that use case? And then where are the various sources in the ecosystem to get the highest quality data that we can in order to prepare that use case? And, you know, David, you mentioned this idea of AI and what I might call more fit for purpose uses of it. So really having specific applications of it and then collecting the data and being able to overlay what your requirements are and create the training set so it's very specific and fit for purpose. And I feel the same way in terms of the vast amounts of data that we have and the need in order to drive to a specific use case. So I think that allows us to be more selective in terms of all of the arrays and the types. It also helps us to go into the ecosystem, to look through the data catalogs, if you will, to understand the requirements and to make sure that you're pulling in the more better quality data in order to fulfill that particular use case. So that's at least one way to think about it.
Yes, thanks, Lorraine. Yeah, I completely agree with you that I mean the quality of data I mean, it has to be part, I mean, of a project if we want to apply and use the powerful of AI in the hospital. Stéphane, what are your view about that? Because you
I didn't get any insight with Lorraine before, but I'm really glad and happy that she expressed what is the status today of the best way to use AI. And I'm just a bit surprised, Lorraine, because I thought that in healthcare there are much more data that you can even gather. But this is the best way. Why? Because of course quality, quantity are key. And what I like to say, not in healthcare, but industrial or everything, that data that is not used is a cost. This is the first thing. It's not a value. People think that gathering a lot of data is going to have a high value. They don't know how, they don't know when. To me, it's still a fantasy, right? The approach that mentioned Lorraine is exactly what everybody needs to do, is to get the right data for the right usage. And then it's too difficult otherwise to get a structured data for everything, right? It's a huge amount of effort as well on this one. So this is what also we are pushing and we're going for. And quality data is even more important because the learning you are doing, because of course AI is not recognizing patterns in plug and play. You need to get this learning phase, right? It's incremental learning as well. So and supervised, I'm sure in terms of healthcare, we're trying the unsupervised learning, which is even more challenging. But things can be improved on its own. If you base your learning on data that you cannot trust, your learning is crap at the end, right? So it's extremely we say more and more important to get this quality data now. It's our fight now, because now we have so many data. So the structured way, why not? But more importantly, the quality together with the quantity now. And there is a fight of how do you gauge this quality data? Is Lorraine?
And well, two more points. I think that there's also different valuation points on data. So if we think about tiers, or you can think about the layers in a layer cake, if you wish, right? And that most fundamental tier would be claims, right? Claims, prescriptions, your very basic structured data, that data that's coming in. You know, your next level then would be your electronic medical record, and a lot of times that's coming in unstructured fashion. And because that is very dynamic and it's at a patient level, that is the next level or quality or price point or value of data. I think on top of that, we start to look at labs and imaging. And then the next layer would be genomics. Very highly valuable data now, especially if you can get to the sequence, if you can get to the RNA levels of it. That's a very valuable layer of your data layer cake. And then finally, on top of that, so much opportunity now for digital data, for wearables, for devices in the home. And so increasingly, that's the top layer of the cake, if you will. So if you think about each of these layers, they have incremental increase in valuation, and together they make up the data packet that you probably need to be driving your use cases from. But the other part of this is this data has to be ingested, it has to be integrated, it has to be linked, and it has to be enriched so that we can really make sense out of it. And so what I hear so often from clients now is that if you think about a therapeutic focus, because that's how so much of healthcare and life sciences, they're organized around therapeutic areas. And so, you know, what clients are asking for is, for example, you know, I would like a really robust, high quality data set in lupus, so that when it comes to the condition of lupus, which is an immunological condition, I can run use cases that would help me identify patients for clinical trials, identify symptoms of patients who might progress to develop lupus later, could see how people are responding or not responding to therapies, I could do health economic and reimbursement types of studies to see what has the highest value in terms of symptom amelioration or response to drug. So I want to drive all those use cases off of a really comprehensive layer cake around lupus or you know, pick your oncology type. So that's how customers see it, and that's what they need. And we have to cut through all of this and make it that easy for them to do their job, because at the end of the day, our clients in healthcare and in life sciences, they're not data people, they're not AI people, they are developing life-saving treatments, and this is just enabling technology and tools to help them do that, and they need professionals such as ourselves in order to make their jobs easy. So it's just going in the toolbox and picking out what they need.
Claire, thanks, Lorraine, for your very valuable inputs on that. Just to make some, because the time is running, so and we are in an international event with this IDO Day. The next question is about international context. We of course, that should be an opportunity for a European company want to export their solutions in AI healthcare. Could we give a general overview about the major difference in the world? About sovereignty. You told Lorraine some subject about regulatory in US. It's the same in Europe. Last week in France, we saw a big security issue that some hackers take the data of 500,000 people. So it's and try to to sell the file. We during the COVID crisis, we saw as well that Israel make a kind of deal with Pfizer as a counterpart with their data. They propose their data to Pfizer. Probably apply some solution in AI. What are your view about the global view in an international context about data in general?
Yes, well, you talk about a very important topic when you talk about the security of data, right? Because we all need to have trust and confidence in the data that we're using, that we're contributing. And an interesting statistic from HIMSS, which is the IT organization, trade association. And they did a study, and they recently reported that as much as 45% of data that is in the healthcare ecosystem, and this is globally, this is in companies, et cetera, as much as 45% of it is unencrypted plain text. Everybody needs to be concerned about that, right? We cannot have unencrypted plain text healthcare data, in this ecosystem if we as global citizens, as international partners, want to be able to cross borders, to solve problems like COVID, to share our data and feel comfortable about it. The security of it is very, very important. And so I think it's really important that everybody be mindful of the need to encrypt the data. I think beyond that, we're seeing a lot of advances in Japan, in China, in terms of data sets that are being created and interest in AI. As you know, in so many countries outside of the US, there are a lot of privacy regulations and regulatory policies that we have to adhere to. We have those in the US as well, but they're probably not quite as restrictive in the US. So I think in the US, we have a little bit more latitude in terms of the data that we can collect and the various use cases. But I think things like encryption, confidentiality of the data, the interoperability of it, data in the cloud, and, you know, to some extent being able to unite around some common causes once we have some of those parameters in place, can make us much more comfortable sharing data and also just solving problems. I did think that the news piece around Pfizer and the country of Israel and the negotiation that they made around being able to receive the Pfizer vaccine in exchange for providing that aggregated patient level data around COVID and particularly COVID outcomes was very interesting. It shows you how powerful data is. I don't know that Pfizer has a plan in mind in terms of how they would use, you know, all of that information, but clearly, you know, the idea of being able to get an entire country's, you know, set of data around COVID is very appealing. So, an interesting use case.
Absolutely, Stéphane, you want to complete about the trust, the confidence about the data, and to complete what just Lorraine said about the international context for as well.
No, yeah, I think fully agree with Lorraine, and she expressed pretty well. What I just want to give another perspective, right? As an SME, French or from any other country, you must have a great ambition, and to try to use this ambition. And okay, we talk about AI. AI for me is pretty, we say, easy for even an SME to get access to it with some great tools and great technologies. And don't be shy. Go to and test and try to collaborate with the best in this world. It can be American, I think, and IBM in medical with Watson has been one of the very first and is great reference. But it could be European, it could be even Chinese. Go to and get the best technologies and try this out. Try not to only work in your own country from the start, because if you try just to get something which is best in your own country, when you try to make it for another country, is a different type of certification and adaptation and everything. It's costly. So to make it international first at the beginning is critical. Is based on experience we got as well, and go for it, right? Don't wait, because the data is there, and the first who is capable to exploit this data to make new application is it's the first we get the market wherever it is. So there is no second place on this one. Is what we call this the first take all, right? And we have a sort of open data as well with a quality which is not so good maybe, but again, if you all of this is available and from remote, from everywhere, I would say, with a grant and everything, of course. So just do it. Don't wait. That's my point, right? And be international at the beginning.
Okay.
If I could just chime into that, because I know a lot of your listeners are interested in being able to do, you know, international collaborations. And I do think that this area, while there are some really large players, certainly the Googles and the Amazons and the Microsoft are some really big players, it's still very immature in many ways. And when a marketplace is immature, it means that there's a lot of fragmentation, there's a lot of decentralization, and there is a lot of opportunity for startups and small companies. So I really do encourage, and I think that we're of a global mindset now where we know that great ideas and great technology advances can come from anywhere. And so there's really an embracing of that. So I would just reiterate what Stéphane said in terms of, if you have an idea, if your company wants to come forward, I would really encourage you to do that. I do think when you make these international connections, identifying strategic partners in order to create business in that country is a really good thing to do, and developing feasibility plans and business plans and really understanding a market and who you're a good fit as far as a strategic partner can really help with your coming into another market with your technology.
That's great what you said, Lorraine. if I well understood, behind what you said, it's about the big GAFA or Amazon, X, Google, Apple, IBM, Watson, and so on. You believe that we could think that I mean, due to the immaturity of the market, or the beginning of the market, there is a big place for specialists, SME, who are, I mean, yeah, very accurate on a specific market, on a niche market.
Yeah, I do. I think there's a lot of room. I think there's a lot of room, and I think there's a need for it. You know, because we don't want to create these monopolies. We don't want to we want to encourage innovation, and we don't, you know, you never know where that next great idea is going to come from. And so the strategic partnerships are really critical. And then, you know, the big companies, they are out there looking for the smaller ones that they can bring in, because they don't have all of the in-house innovation or expertise that they need, because they're trying to do everything at scale. So I think everybody is dependent on the smaller, more nimble, innovative technology companies.
I don't know what you think about, Stéphane and Lorraine, and I believe it's a great conclusion to say. I mean, if you are a SME, you have a good, very good solutions, a big specialist. The world is yours. I believe it's. It's. I can imagine when we start better conclusions. If you agree, I propose to conclude and to thank you very, very, very much again for your participation and your very smart inputs, both. Yeah, please add some things if you want. But I believe it's a better conclusion I could imagine.
Absolutely. Thanks again. Yeah. Have a great venture to all of you guys.
Yes.
Thanks again, Lorraine and Stéphane, for your very smart participations.
Okay, it's been a pleasure. Very nice to spend the evening with you, gentlemen.
Yeah,
Thanks very much,
I mean, we will communicate your contacts. I mean, to the company who want to interact with you after this webinar. Thanks again.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye.